Well, hello and welcome to Denver Broncos country. I am Kodiak Broncos, and today I am here to give you a few things that you need to know about our offensive coordinator, Davis Webb. Actually, I should say everything you need to know about our offensive coordinator, Davis Webb. But before we get into it, I just want to say a couple of things. First of all, leave a like if you enjoy, subscribe if you're not already. You always wait till the end. Hopefully, I'll earn it. Yeah, without further ado, let's dive right into it because we got no time to waste. And I'll get to a few of your comments after this. But if you're watching the replay, make sure you leave a like as well. And yeah, either way, let's dive right into it. So I just want to start off by beginning with his career in college football because he has a really interesting arc to becoming the Denver Broncos offensive coordinator. And eventually he's going to be a head coach. There have been a couple people that are really smart and that really know their stuff in the NFL landscapes that say that Davis Webb ultimately will be a head coach in the NFL one day. And you know what? I wholeheartedly agree. I think that that would be insane. I'd be floored if he didn't end up being a head coach soon. But assuming all goes well, I think that's in the future for him. So, just talking about his career at Texas Tech, this was really interesting because he was a three-star recruit. He was the 28th ranked quarterback in the 2013 recruiting class out of Prosper High School in Prosper, Texas. Now, I don't know if that's North Texas or South Texas, but surprise, surprise, high school football quarterback from Texas was good. Isn't that shocking to all of us? So he started at Texas Tech in 2013 and 2014 as a true freshman and sophomore. And something that's really interesting is that he actually ended up transferring away from Texas Tech before the 2016 season began. He got injured during the middle of the 2014 season, and he lost the starting job to Patrick Mahomes, and he never got the job back, which is interesting. I don't know. Isn't it funny how the NFL works sometimes? But yeah, obviously Patrick Mahomes got the starting spot, and apparently Patrick Mahomes ended up being pretty good at football as well, or something like that. So then Davis Webb transfers to Cal in 2016 to basically restart his career, and he ended up his college football season statistically with almost 10,000 yards and 92 total touchdowns as well. And that's interesting. Very high level of play throughout his college football career. And I'm going to talk about his NFL career as a quarterback as well so far. So he ends up getting drafted by the, what should I call it? Uh, New York Giants. Why was I blanking on the name for the Giants right there? So he ends up getting drafted by the Giants in the third round in 2017, potentially to be a successor to Eli Manning. And I don't remember who the Giants GM was at the time. Maybe it was Rosberg, maybe it was Gettleman. I know they were kind of in a transition period at that time, but this was a very realistic possibility because Eli Manning was getting older. But unfortunately, what happened in 2017 was the Giants were in absolute free fall mode. Okay. The Giants had made the playoffs in the 2016 year. And in 2017, they decided that Ben McAdoo decided that they were going to bench Eli Manning. Now, unfortunately, they benched Eli Manning for Geno Smith. They did not bench Eli Manning for Davis Webb. And this was back then when, uh, it was more rather defined to have a third string quarterback on your team rather than it is today, where it's just kind of like a clipboard holder. And you may like the QB roles behind the quarterback are much more defined today, I would say, than they were just even 8, 9 years ago. But yeah, after that, he bounced around between the Giants, Jets, the Bills, and then the Giants again. But he knew that he really didn't have the talent to make a difference on the NFL field. And he was more of like a clipboard holder quarterback type that I think teams were more accustomed to back in the day rather than they are now. That being said, he was a really, really good offensive mind. He became one of those like good in meetings type quarterbacks, and he probably could have had a longer NFL career if he really wanted one. What's up, Darian? What's up, Darian Bustamante? Cool to see you in here again. We had that fun talk today about that guy in my comments. But yeah, so he quickly became a clipboard holder type, which once again, I don't mean that as like an insult to him. Being a backup quarterback where you're more known for your smarts rather than your actual ability to, be athletically talented and gifted and make plays on the field. There's nothing wrong with that. You still are getting paid uh, a lot of money to live a lot of people's dream. But towards the end of his career, he knew that coaching was what he wanted to pursue. He retired. I think he was either 28 or 29 when he retired. He had like a 5 year ish NFL career. And yeah, I think he retired at the end of the 2022 season as well. And that's ultimately what did him in. Yes, Yes, exactly. Daria Bustamante understands the game, and honestly, once again, I don't mean that as like an insult to him. Like that's a very valuable trait to a lot of NFL teams. So here's the transition to coaching that I want to talk about. So he retired early, and he moved straight into wanting to climb the ranks as an NFL head coach or an NFL coach in the early 2023 hiring cycle when all these teams had openings. And you think about the teams with openings at that time. You think about um, the Texans, you think about the Broncos. There are a handful of other teams that also had openings during that point, but I think he really just wanted to coach the offensive side of the ball, and he was willing to take pretty much any position that he would get. Well, lo and behold, how about coaching Russell Wilson in your first year being on an NFL staff? So his first interview was with the Broncos in 2023 after Sean Payton became the head coach of this team. I think it was in February or March of 2023, and apparently he was hired on the spot. So he must have been a really, really good interview. He must have just blown Peyton's doors off because Sean Payton said that that's the only guy I've ever hired on the spot after an interview. Um, is Peyton going to let him call the plays? I'd like to see that potentially. I think that that's very well within the realm of possibility, but I will get to that. I will get to that, Rob Burson. Yes, not right away. I agree with you, Darian Bustamante, not right away. But eventually, I think it is going to happen in some capacity. We already saw it happen this preseason against the Arizona Cardinals. And man, he made Jarrett Stidham look like a world beater. He made Trent Sherfield look like an all pro. But either way, once again, I had already said this, but how would you like to have it be your first year on an NFL staff and you're immediately coaching Russell Wilson, who is coming off a career worst year in 2022. So I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall in that quarterback room. So eventually, Davis Webb had coached Jarrett Stidham, Bo Nix, and Zach Wilson in 2024 and 2025. Um, when the Broncos were going through their whole quarterback competition after they drafted Bo Nix back in 2024, I think it would have been really interesting to be a fly on the wall because I think Davis Webb probably had some sort of input as well to what kind of player that Bo Nix would become. And eventually, after 2 years of really, really strong just being impressing the staff and just Sean Payton being like, okay, I know what I've got in this guy. Same with Zach Strief on the offensive line. They gave him nice little promotions. They promoted Davis Webb to passing game coordinator in March 2025, and they promoted Zach Strief to run game coordinator that same offseason as well. Now, don't get it twisted. What you saw on Sundays this past year was more a product of Sean Payton, Joe Lombardi, and Pete Carmichael than it was Davis Webb. That being said, Davis Webb, very involved in the installs, very involved. I'm sure his input was very heavily valued for game plans as well. But yeah, so that was his transition to coaching. And then he's had a really fast rise in NFL circles. And that's what I really want to uh, get after this. So he had a really fast rise. He entered the cycle getting multiple head coaching interviews between the Buffalo Bills, the Las Vegas Raiders, and the Arizona Cardinals. Now, what's interesting is obviously he didn't get any of those head coaching jobs. Otherwise, I think he probably would be gone right now. I think, if you're an NFL coach and you're just wanting to be on the fast track, I think it's just within your best interest to take as many of these jobs as you possibly want when they become available because they don't get offered to just anyone. So, multiple teams also showed interest in being an offensive coordinator, like Buffalo and Baltimore. I know that in Buffalo, he probably would not have had full control of the offense, but in Baltimore, he would have because they just hired Jesse Minter to be their defensive coordinator or to be their head coach, and he's going to be more involved with the defensive side of things. And the way defensive coordinators set up their staff now is all right. You have a defensive coordinator, head coach, and you have a wonder boy at offensive coordinator. You saw the Seahawks do it this year with Mike McDonald and Clint Kubiak. Kubiak, who congratulations to him. He also just got hired by the Las Vegas Raiders, but he also earned a lot of responsibility and trust from Sean Payton, George Payton, and the Penners. Okay. The Penners are still very, very much involved in this team's operations. And it wouldn't surprise me if they were just like, hey, man, we can't lose this guy. We can't lose a guy like Davis Webb. And potentially he is going to be the next ever Broncos head coach. And assuming his current trajectory, he will be an NFL head coach soon. Now, there's rumors that he is being groomed to be the replacement for Sean Payton. I don't know how true that is. I think, Sean Payton said he wants to coach for 8 more years, and even if Davis Webb ends up being the best offensive coordinator in football this upcoming year, I think Sean Payton has still very much earned the right to coach this team. It's kind of like the McDonald Harbaugh situation back in 2023. So the Baltimore Ravens have an insane year in 2023, but you obviously weren't going to fire your head coach after that year. But either way, there are rumors that he's going to be the next Denver Broncos head coach. It was either him or Jim Leonard, and they couldn't lose one of those two. They couldn't lose both of those two. They had to protect at least one of those two this upcoming offseason, or this past offseason, I should say. But either way, that was really interesting as well. And Darian Bastomati says the Penners know that he's the future. Yeah, I agree. The problem is, once again, Sean Payton, this is still very much his team. And even if Davis Webb's an amazing OC, I don't know if they're necessarily grooming him to be the next Denver Broncos head coach. But yes, Davis Webb is absolutely a future head coach in this league. I remember a lot of really smart guys who know a lot about football. Anytime that they would bring up the Broncos coaching staff, like I remember watching Brett Coleman back in July 2024, he said that the Broncos had two future NFL head coaches on their staff in Jim Leonard and Davis Webb. And obviously, Davis Webb is the up and coming offensive mind. It seems like defensive coaches with what happened with Rabel and what happened with Mike McDonald this past year with New England and Seattle, it seems like defensive coaches have swung the meta. But trust me, it's always going to go back to the offensive coaches, okay? It's an offensive league, always has been, always will be. And you're just more wise to protect your offensive coaches rather than your defensive coaches, in my opinion. Either way, so I do want to get to a few of your comments here. Uh, there has been a couple of really good points. Okay, it seems like Darian is very active in the chat. Good stuff, good stuff. But yeah, now this is interesting. As far as whether or not he'll give up the plays, I'm not entirely sure. I think it will happen at some point. I can't imagine Sean Payton feels good about handing it off to a first-time NFL uh, offensive coordinator in the 2026 season, because ultimately it is still going to be Davis Webb's first year being the OC with literally any team on any staff. So I can't imagine that Sean Payton feels that good about giving that responsibility up. But you saw Davis Webb get responsibility calling plays in the preseason, and my goodness, did he do a good job against the Arizona backups? Like, I can't remember the final score of that game, but I know that our backups are a lot better than other teams' backups, but man, that game was an incredible performance by Davis Webb. So yeah. There was also something else that I wanted to touch on. Oh yeah. So, talking about Davis Webb's transition to coaching, this was a relatively fast rise, and I don't think this happened just straight out of nowhere. Okay. Once again, he interviewed with the Broncos as his first interview in the 2023 uh, coaching cycle. Like, there were rumors that he wanted to get into coaching. I remember Barstool said something about, look out for Davis Webb. And maybe Davis Webb just is that like Barstool guy. Maybe he is that coach that, will go on podcasts. And, I think that there's something to be said about media savvy coaches like Gruden, like Sean Payton, like Davis Webb. And yeah, so that's kind of interesting. I'm interested to see more of his personality this upcoming year. I really hope that we get to see more of him. I really hope that we get to see a lot more of what he has to offer and what he has to bring on Sundays for this team. Darian says, hopefully Davis can relieve some pressure for Sean and help him make quicker decisions and such. Yeah, I agree. 1000%. A lot of issues that we had on this offensive side of the ball this past year, I think it was just the result of Sean Payton having a little too much on his plate. I think, we had late subs. There were just a lot of issues. We would just spam screen passes and RPOs when everything went bad throughout this year. But yeah, so play call is overrated. They will have their fingerprints on scheme and game day calls. I mean, I wouldn't say the play caller duty is overrated, because ultimately there are some guys where you get to that point and that's where you just can absolutely thrive. And there was a couple times throughout the Chiefs' tenure where Eric Bieniemy would be the third down and red zone play caller. He'd be like, all right. Andy Reid would be like, all right, Eric Bieniemy, give me your best third down play call in this situation. Give me your best red zone play call in this situation. And they signed off on that. They signed off on splitting the duties like that. And that didn't happen this past year, the past few years with Matt Nagy. But I wouldn't be surprised to see a similar structure here because that's something we really struggled with this past year was the money downs. Until J.K. Dobbins got hurt, whenever it was third down, it was just basically a dead drive for our offense. But yeah, Sean needs to step down as a play caller. He lost his fastball. I really don't agree. I think the second half of the year was much more apt. It was much more in tune. And I think a lot of the issues you saw on the offensive side of the ball was just, once again, Sean Payton doing a little too much and having a little too much on his plate. And also, just personnel wise, I just think that there were times where we just couldn't make it work. Okay. I remember nobody said this about after the Buffalo game. Nobody said this about after the Green Bay game. We were lamenting and praising Sean Payton for how well he had done as a play caller in this, whatever. Move more up tempo. Yes, that is something that I would like to see. We are very much a team in position to really take advantage of a lot of these up tempo things if we really want to do so. And yeah, talk faster, more up tempo. Maybe Sean Payton just does need to talk a little bit faster. Maybe, I don't know. I've had a sugar cookie latte from Starbucks. Starbucks, it's the first time I ever tried it. But wow, I am definitely caffeinated right now. And as I was driving home, I got the news and notifications, and my phone was going absolutely crazy that Davis Webb was being hired to be the Broncos offensive coordinator. But yeah, only criticism I have is the run scheme and play calling. I don't really have a lot of criticism for the run scheme per se, because a lot of it is the same things that uh, Dan Campbell and Ben Johnson do. And the run scheme looks anything but dated. I think a lot of it just boils down to the fact that this offensive line is built to pass protect above all else. And this offensive line is built to, be how do I put this? It's just built better for a passing game, a quick passing game, bail us out and third down, long drop back situation sort of thing. Even though they didn't play very well against the Patriots in the AFC Championship, I think that's still largely what this offensive line is predicated on. But I don't think the run scheme necessarily is the issue, because you saw J.K. Dobbins this previous year, and he was averaging near 5 yards per carry. So I think the issue is more of a lack of talent at that position. I think it's more just the fact that they didn't really want to take that seriously. I wouldn't say it's too complex. Break it down to a few bread and butter schemes. I wouldn't say it's too complex necessarily, but once again, I do just want to reiterate that I think the scheming is not far from the issue, because a lot of it is what Dan Campbell and Ben Johnson do, and that is they make it look like it is hell on wheels. Sean is still an elite play designer at worst. Yeah, seriously. Okay, let's assume that Sean Payton does give up the play calling duties and he does want to be more of a CEO head coach. He's still a fantastic play designer. Like that thing, there was a breakdown that somebody did against Green Bay where they would isolate one of their linebackers and shift motion into isolating a guy in space. And I was like, oh my goodness, this was absolutely genius. So yeah, let's go to Twitter real quick and just see what everybody's saying. So obviously, Adam Schefter, our guy, uh, Davis Webb has agreed to become the Broncos offensive coordinator. He had other opportunities, but he opted to remain with the Broncos. Maybe the fact that he had I know he interviewed for other OC positions, and I know that he withdrew his name from the Raiders consideration, but yeah. Ian Rappaport saying the Broncos are promoting QB's coach Davis Webb to be offensive coordinator per the insiders. Sleeper Broncos saying Jordan Lopez from Mainly Broncos saying that the Broncos are officially promoting QB coach Davis Webb to offensive coordinator. And then official announcement from the team, head coach Sean Payton has named Davis Webb offensive coordinator and Logan Kilgore as the quarterback's coach as well. And it just seems everybody's happy. We have this pessimistic comment saying Webb will be the next scapegoat when our leader decided to run a QB rush in overtime, killing the rest of the season. I think that's a completely. You see this clip from The Wolf of Wall Street. I'm not leaving. I'm not leaving. Davis Webb is here to stay. Will he? So now there's just a lot of questions like, all right, who's actually going to be doing what on this team? But yeah, no. So I'm gonna get out of here pretty soon. But let me know your guys's last few comments on what you have to say about Davis Webb being promoted. Um, do you guys like it? Do you guys love it? Me personally, I absolutely love it. I think, once again, you get these Wonder Boy offensive coordinators, and you got to let them stay within the building. You got to let them stay within the building. And ultimately, that's something that we're going to do. It's going to be interesting to see what fingerprints he has on this offensive unit this upcoming year. And that's just ultimately something I'm really, really excited to see. It's something I frankly cannot wait to see. And yeah, overall, I'm just super duper excited. I'll get to a few more of your comments. I'll just keep rambling for a little bit longer after I take one more sip of my sugar cookie latte. Simply a wait and see, but I like him a lot more than Lombardi. Yeah, that's what I'm saying too. Like, I think Lombardi was not that good of an offensive coordinator, or at least we didn't really see Lombardi's fingerprints on this offensive on this offensive ecosystem or anything like that. And I think a lot of that is due to the fact that Joe Lombardi, his stock when he got hired here as the offensive coordinator was absolutely rock bottom. So when you're Joe Lombardi and you're just like, all right, I'm going to go to a team. I'm going to get a fake offensive coordinator position because that's what it was in Denver the past 3 years. But I think Sean Payton trusts Davis Webb to do something innovative with this offense, much more so than he did Joe Lombardi because Joe Lombardi was terrible with the Chargers after he got fired. So, yeah, Elway, Webb, Knicks, Reeves, Shanny, Elway. Similar dynamic. You know what? I agree. I agree. And it's gonna be interesting to see how everything turns out. But yeah, I think I'm gonna get out of here. I think I've gone long enough, and I think I've been able to interact with y'all. But either way, shout out to y'all in the chat. Darian, I'll see you in the Coast group chat, I assume. Darian, Paul, Jammin, just a bunch of other guys. And yeah, either way, I am super duper excited to see what comes of this. And I'll see you guys next time. Go Broncos.